Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you for our witnesses that are here. There are numerous documents from the FDA that discuss the importance of exercising regulatory flexibility in the approval of ALS therapies. Do you know how the FDA has exercised regulatory flexibility when it comes to reviewing clinical trials with ALS?
Well, we exercise regulatory flexibility as we review the data from all life-threatening diseases, including ALS. Our ability to fully exercise regulatory flexibility within the confines of our statutory standards is, at the end of the day, is dependent on the data that is in front of us and what the clinical trial results are telling us. And so there are times when, despite the fact that we are very committed and very willing to be as flexible as we can within our standards, the data are not sufficient for us to be able to exercise the extent of regulatory flexibility that we would want to be able to do in situations such as ALS, where there is such a huge unmet medical need.
There is, but the issue that you have is we feel like it's very possible that the drug will work well in some ALS patients and not others, just kind of like chemotherapy treatments work well for some cancer patients and some others. And what the fear is that we're sometimes waiting on the FDA to have approvals, but yet the ALS patients are just saying, listen, we'll try whatever. I mean, if it's working in some patients, and even though it may not be working in all patients, the ability to try, we passed a bill for pediatrics that said the right to try, to allow pediatric cancer patients the right to try drugs that were available. And I think that's what ALS patients are wanting too.
Well, these are very important points. I think it's important to distinguish the access, the importance to provide access to investigational therapies through expanded access programs or right to try, versus the importance of being able to study drugs in controlled clinical trials in a way that would allow us to understand whether they work and whether they're sufficiently safe. And so we try to balance that need by working with sponsors to put in place clinical trials that have the best chance to be able to give us answers, including answers about subpopulations within ALS. And I recognize and I agree that this is a very heterogeneous disease, as many rare diseases are. And in parallel to that, we worked with sponsors to facilitate access to treatments through expanded access. And to that effect, obviously, we try to do everything that we can to facilitate those programs.
Well, I've visited with some of my constituents that have had responded well to some of the ALS treatments that they have participated with clinical trials. And then, of course, someone would love the opportunity to do that. And I just wonder if the FDA is doing other things to ensure that treatments that are available to patients that they've seen some success with are available to other patients that would like to try it. Because I know we've had several reach out to us and say, hey, we've spoke to constituent A, and they responded well in this trial, but we've tried to get involved in the trial and we're being denied. And I'm just wondering if the FDA could be more flexible on that.
Well, we try to be as flexible as we can within our authorities. So, for instance, we work with sponsors and we encourage them to have open label extensions in their clinical trials after the controlled phase of the trial has ended, so that all patients can move into that open label extension and have access to the drug. And we also encourage sponsors to make the drug available through expanded access after the trial is completed, or even only after the controlled phase, the placebo-controlled phase of the trial is completed. Ultimately, we need the sponsors to be willing to work with us, and obviously we engage them regularly on these matters, because we really understand the tremendous urgency and unmet medical need.
All right, well, I'm out of time. If Congress, if we can be helpful to you in any way, if there's any barriers that's in the place that's keeping you from going to do that, please let us know. With that, I'll yield back. Thank you, Madam Chair.